Today I'm talking to Julia Lynam, who lives in beautiful northeastern USA in Vermont. She was born in Cardiff in Wales, and her childhood love of the natural world led her to become what she calls a nature geek. As an adult, she discovered this same deep connection to circle dance with its roots in the ancient knowledge of the earth, the rhythms, cycles and shapes of nature, building culture, community and connection throughout history. Today, by leading circle dances at the Neskaya Movement Arts Centre in New Hampshire, Julia supports people to connect with themselves, each other, and the pulse and rhythm of life, creating a sense of well-being for participants. So now, over to Julia. Hello, Julia.
Hello, Venetia, and thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. We're here today as part of Stefan Friedman's project, which is looking at ways in which movement can help relieve the stress of trauma. And this is the context in which I'm thinking about circle dancing, which is a huge part of my life and has been for the past 25 years. I'm not a therapist in any way, and I've never really viewed circle dancing as therapy or offered it in such a way. I offer it as dance, I do it myself as dance, but I find that it really makes me feel so much better every time I've been dancing. It enables me to connect with other people, to hear beautiful music, and sometimes, perhaps in a pandemic, we have to dance by ourselves, but we can even then feel the connection to people throughout the world and reach what might be an elevated state of enjoyment in the dance.
Can you explain a bit for people who perhaps haven't come across circle dancing? How does that differ from, say, dances of universal peace or any other community dances?
Oh, that's a great question. Circle dance, in essence, is a continuation of the village dances, the community dances that people have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. And some of our dances do date back a very long way. It's not a performance. It's not done as a competition in any way. It's people coming together in person, if possible, holding hands, if possible, and doing dances which bring the community together and which very often celebrate, as they have done over the millennia, the turning of the year, the planting, the harvesting, the summer and winter solstices, and also events in human lives like marriages, births, even funerals. And also dancing for the sheer enjoyment of it. So our dances are done to recorded or live music if we can possibly get it. Some of them are absolutely traditional dances that come from many, many cultures around the world. And some of them are more newly choreographed. These days, we have the privilege, especially here in the United States and in Western Europe, of exploring all sorts of different cultures because people from many, many different countries come here and bring their dances and their music. And so we're able to learn these dances, and people have also, as people will do, created new dances in the same idiom. So we have a huge range of dances. You mentioned, you mentioned the dances of universal peace. They stem from a different root. They were brought together by a gentleman called Samuel Taylor some time ago in the 60s or 70s, and they are usually sung sacred phrases. They're movement put to sacred phrases from all the different religions of the world. Circle dance, while it might use some religious music, we have dances to Kyrie eleison, for example, and to both Muslim and Greek Orthodox, all sorts of different chants, but there is no religious aspect to it. And we actually don't sing as we dance, we usually just dance.
Because when I was, researching before I spoke to you, I was really intrigued to see how the roots were, from the ancient goddess cultures and the harvesting, and as you were saying earlier, how that was so much part of life, and we've just lost that connection so much now, haven't we? it's so good that people like yourself are bringing that back into life.
Yes, and one of the places that we celebrate it, you mentioned in your introduction, is a beautiful circle dance centre called Neskaya, which is in the White Mountains of New Hampshire in the northeastern United States. This was established in 1996, I think it was, as a centre for circle dance and other similar practices. So we have people who lead Tai Chi and yoga and other practices like that there as well. And this is a place where we're able to hold regular dances when there's not a pandemic, and also to offer weekends, camps, workshops, many different events. We have gone online, so we offer Zoom sessions as well. And I'm sure that at the end of this video, we'll put the references so that you can get in touch with these places if you wish.
It looks a fantastic place. I was reading it's got 12 sides to the dance floor. It's built in accordance with sacred geometry. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's oriented to the 4 directions. It has a beautiful wall of windows that look out onto the west, to the sunset. And it's built of 4 parabolic arches. So it's like a handkerchief. If you imagine taking a handkerchief and holding it so that holding it in the middle so that the points reach the ground. That's the shape of the building, which allows it to have a very lofty ceiling inside of about 30 foot with no visible internal supports. So underneath that lofty ceiling is the dance space, which you're right, is a dodecahedron. It has 12 sides.
It looked amazing, and the setting looked fantastic for people to dance.
It's in a very beautiful part of the country, yes.
So when did you first get involved with Naskaya?
Oh, well, let me backtrack a little bit further to when I got involved with sacred circle. Oh, and we call it sacred circle dancing sometimes. As I said, it has nothing to do with religion. And I think that perhaps the word sacred could be replaced even by holistic, if you like, because it's sacred in the sense that all life is sacred, all earth is sacred, our connections in community are sacred and holy and important things. So I first encountered sacred circle dance in Hove in England in 1993. And I was looking for something to do in the evenings. I had a quite demanding job in public relations, an office job. And I discovered that there was a circle dance session just round the road from me on Friday evenings. So I went along one evening, and from a distance, I heard the strains of beautiful music, which I later discovered was Greek music, coming out. I walked into this room, and there was a circle of about 20 people holding hands and just moving together in harmony. This is what the circle dancing creates. It's moving in harmony with other people, forgetting everything else, moving to beautiful music together. So I was instantly hooked. And I emigrated to the United States a few years later. And once I was here in the United States, of course, I looked around for circle dancing. I'd been dancing, going to dance camps and workshops in England. And so when I came to the United States, I sought out a place to dance, and the nearest center, I mean, there are very few circle dance centers in the world, actually, maybe 2 or 3. And I was very lucky to find quite a lot of time there, visit it quite often.
You learnt in Hove, and that was your first, was that in the 90s, you said?
Yes, that was back in the 90s. And what I saw when I went into that room, what we actually do in circle dancing, because it's hard to imagine it, I think, unless you've actually done it. It's very hard to know what it feels like until you've actually done it, is we, if possible, get together. We have found ways to do it over Zoom, but if possible, we get together in person in a beautiful place if we can. We usually have a centerpiece like the one that I have behind me here with flowers and a candle, because I always say things in circle dance always have 2 reasons. There's a practical reason, which is if you want to dance in a circle, it's really good to have a central point so that everybody knows where the center is and you can move around it. And the other point is that it helps us to focus. A spot of something very beautiful, often natural objects in the center, helps us to concentrate our minds on what we're doing, to not spend time chatting between dances, but just sink into the feeling, into the atmosphere of creating these beautiful dances together. So we hold hands in a circle. The person who is leading the dance will explain the steps, demonstrate the steps, give us a chance to try them out. And then we'll put the music on. The music is usually recorded music because we have such a huge repertoire that it's an enormous challenge for live bands, but there are a few live bands, wonderful ones in the world. We have one very near me, it's called Spiral, and they're up in Quebec in Canada. And when we can dance with live music, it's absolutely wonderful, but we do use recorded music usually. And then we move off to the dance. And we don't necessarily get it right first time. You can't learn a dance by just talking the words. Everybody is very welcoming and forgiving, and we just move through the steps together. In a session, the facilitator will usually start with more basic dances to give us a bit of a warm-up before we get going. And the dances can be very, very simple. I mean, perhaps one of the simplest steps of all is walking 3 paces forward and rocking 1 back. 3 forward, rock back. That's a whole dance. And you can do that to a beautiful piece of music. And in fact, we sometimes do long dances, which can go on for hours if we want them to, but that doesn't happen very often.
Oh, gosh, I should think that gets into a very meditative state with that. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, some of the dances are very meditative, but we use a huge range of music, and some of them are also very lively.
Mm-hmm. I was looking on YouTube to see the different dances before talking to you, and for people with trauma or stress, they all look like a very welcoming place for people.
I think it can be. It may not be for everyone. I realize that different practices work for different people. Circle dancing certainly works for me. If I am worried about something, I can just put on the music at home and do a few dances, and my goodness, it really makes a difference to my heart rate and my blood pressure. I've worked quite a bit with people who have suffered the trauma of developmental or physical disabilities, and circle dances can really bring great relief and joy into these people's lives. I lead seated dances. It sounds strange to sit down and dance, but dance is it's our birthright. It's something that everybody is able to do and can do, and that people always did in their villages and communities for millennia. So why not be able to do a dance? You can do a beautiful dance sitting down, and you can enjoy the emotional freedom of it, the psychological freedom of it, and also you're getting some exercise, which people who are sedentary don't often get. We can incorporate wheelchairs into our dances. Oh, can I tell you a little story?
I love that story. Yes, about
a little story about a time when I was presenting a series of circle dance sessions for people in the community. It was a community inclusion program for people with what are now called intellectual disabilities, who also had physical disabilities. And we were working with a creation myth from South America, a Mapuche creation myth. So we learned the story, we told the story, we retold bits of it to one another, we decided what were our favorite bits, and we decided which bits we could dance to. And we made dances, and people chose characters that they wanted to be. And there was one of the dancers who was confined to a wheelchair and non-verbal, and he really had very little movement, but he was able to wave his arms around. So somebody said, well, what can Mickey do? Who can he be? What can he be in this dance? And one of the other dancers said, well, he can be the campfire. We'll put him in the middle, and he can move his arms like flames, and he can be the campfire. And so Mickey was able to, even though he was not mobile himself.
That's lovely hearing that. Was that the Camp Hill community that happened?
That was not in the Camp Hill community, but it's strange that you should bring that up. Not strange because I told you about it before. I spent a year as a residential volunteer in a Camp Hill village in upstate New York. Now, Camp Hill, for those who may not have heard of it, is an organization based on the principles and teachings of Rudolf Steiner, who was a philosopher who lived in Austria mainly, in the early 20th century, and is best known for the Steiner schools, which are known in the United States as Waldorf schools. But Rudolf Steiner gave us teachings about all sorts of different aspects of life. And one of the aspects that he dealt with was the education and care of people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And the Camp Hill movement has developed that work since, around about soon after the Second World War, because the first one that was established was Botton Village, which I believe is in Lancashire. And the Steiner's philosophy works with the cycle, the turning of the year. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? We mentioned that earlier. Circle dancing works with the festivals. We might even talk about the 8 Celtic festivals of the year as we go through the seasons. And so while I was in that village, I worked with the people who live there who have disabilities, the people who live there who don't have diagnosed disabilities, and we had wonderful circle dance sessions in the beautiful hall and the outdoor spaces that they have there. And that was where I really began to work with people diagnosed with disabilities, and found that circle dance really touches a chord with so many different people, whatever their ability. When you think about it, in the village dances, if you ever see a picture of people dancing in villages for Greek weddings maybe, or something like that, everybody's dancing. The little children, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the young men, the old men. It doesn't matter what their age or ability is, they get up and dance, and that's the spirit of the circle dance.
And you know, very young children, don't they? Toddlers, if they hear music, their natural impulse is to dance. And
it's so good if they get to hear music and get encouraged to do that. That's absolutely wonderful. And while we welcome children into any dance session that we're doing, we do sometimes offer special family or children's dances that are particularly aimed at the young crowd.
Would you say there's a particular age group who are drawn to circle dances?
I think you'll find, if you look at the pictures and the videos, that it's mostly what I would call older women. I can say that because I'm one myself. And I think that we find that because the dances are perhaps less energetic than some other forms of dance, although they can be energetic if you want them to be, but there's a very wide range. And the women in societies, in cultures, are often the ones who carry the traditions with them. So they carry the tradition of dancing, and they carry, some of the dances are even teaching dances. There are dances which demonstrate the ways in which people should behave to one another. And I think that this carrying of ancient wisdom is something that falls most often to the elder women. And so the dances, being the embodiment of a lot of the wisdom, tend to work and attract older women. But anybody is welcome, and I've danced with people of all ages, genders, religions, races. It's there for everyone, and everyone's welcome to bring their own ideas to the circle as well.
So do you choreography, create your own dances as well for the people?
I've created very few dances myself. There are some very gifted choreographers among us, and there is a huge body of dance. So I haven't been inspired to choreograph very many dances, although the one that I have choreographed is to a Monty Python song, the Galaxy song. And my feeling is that my calling is to bring out, preserved, practice this huge body of dances that we already have. There are thousands of them that we've collected, and Some of them are traditional and ancient dances. Some of them are newer dances. The body of Israeli dances, for example, most Israeli traditional folk dances were created since the creation of the nation of Israel. So although there are older Jewish Hebrew dances, most of the dances, and we do a lot of them in circle dancing, are modern traditional dances, if you like.
Is there a particular country whose dances you resonate more than other ones, or are they all for you beautiful, all of them?
There is a huge body of dance from the Balkan, Near East and Greek area, and the music is very beautiful. There is one particular circle dance facilitator, her name is Laura Shannon, who has devoted decades to researching the ethnography, the dance ethnography of women's dances in Greece and the Balkan area. And she is a wonderful circle dance leader and presents very beautiful workshops and other sessions. And those are certainly extremely beautiful dances and extremely beautiful music, which I would never have heard if I had not become involved in circle dance. For me, it's given me a chance to experience music from many, many different cultures, which has been very exciting and rewarding.
And with either refugees or people coming from different countries, migration, bringing those dances with them, it's a real way of reuniting beyond language and differences.
Yes, and we can connect our spirits with people in other countries. This is being recorded in April of 2022, and at the moment we are doing a lot of dances from the Ukraine because we want to support the people of the Ukraine, and one way to do that is to celebrate their culture and to connect with them on the higher level that one does in dancing and enjoying the music of this particular culture.
Fascinating, yes. And also the shapes, I was reading that in the dance, almost like the sacred geometry you were talking about with the building, that's also brought into the dance too.
Oh, well, when we talk about circle, we're nearly always dancing in circles, which is a totally holistic symbol and a sacred symbol for people all over the world. Some of our dances go in lines, long lines. Sometimes they wind around in spirals. Sometimes some of the Greek dances, you have short lines of people. And yes, if you were to look from above when people are dancing, they're drawing mandalas on the ground. Perhaps the dance goes in and back out and then around and in and out. And if you had a camera up above, you could see this beautiful pattern. So it really feels to me that at a place like Naskaya, where we've been dancing for 25 years, that we've drawn many, many beautiful sacred mandalas on the floor. And every time we dance, we're dancing in among those mandalas. And talking about places where the dance happens, I do have to mention the Findhorn community in northern Scotland, which has been a huge influence on the circle dance world, the circle dance community. Back in the 1970s, a German ballet master by the name of Bernhard Vosin started leading what he called Heiliger Tanz, which we've translated really into sacred dance. And he gathered folk dances from around the world and brought them into circles and worked with the significance, with the spiritual significance of the dance. And many people who danced with Bernhard have moved out from Findhorn and brought those dances to the rest of the world. And the sacred dance is still held at Findhorn a couple of times a week, maybe more than that, even really? To this day. It's a real centre for the dance.
We talk about Findhorn. There may be some people listening who don't know what a significant influence Findhorn had, particularly in the 70s and things in the UK. Could you explain a bit about the Findhorn community?
Yes, the Findhorn community, which is in northern Scotland on the Firth of Moray, is an eco-village. They're a leader in ecological home design and a new age community that started back in the 1960s and has grown and influenced a great many people to think about new ways of living in the world. And one of these is circle dancing, of course. So the Findhorn community is a central point and a strong node, if you like, on the network of light. And it offers many, many different workshops. It offers opportunities to live and work there and eventually become a member of the community. But it also has many, many satellites in terms of individual people and other organizations that lean on Findhorn for some of their philosophy and some of their ideas. And the people who worked there with Bernard Vosine, with the sacred dance back in the 60s and 70s, many of them traveled and brought dances to us here in the United States and to other parts of the world. So we still look to Findhorn. They hold a beautiful, wonderful festival of sacred dance and song every year. And we still look to them as a sort of mothership in some ways, although not all of the dances that we do have come through that route. They've been collected in other directions as well.
Yes, that's good to hear. And you were talking earlier about the traditional dances in Ukraine and Eastern European countries. But I understand that circle dancing is different from international folk dancing. Could you explain a bit about that? Because I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Yes. One of my friends, in fact, Jenny, the woman who established Neskaya, was an international folk dancer before she became a circle dancer. And when she discovered circle dancing, she said, it's international folk dance with a candle in the middle. And if you take that into the spiritual realm, it's dance with intention. And this is a dance practice that brings people together. We often dance, we set intentions, we put people into the circle. We might have a dance with the intention of promoting world peace. We might dance for happiness. We might dance for grace. There's an intention to what we're doing. International folk dances is an absolutely wonderful experience. It has a performance aspect. People form teams and they perform. So it also has a competitive aspect to it. This is not necessarily what everybody is in it for, but that does exist, and it doesn't exist in circle dancing. Circle dancing is purely for enjoyment, relaxation, for emotional relief, for bringing people together. So there's no performance or competitive ideas in it. It also, because it's not for performance, is why we are able to allow ourselves to sink into long meditative dances or dance, which would not be something that someone would want to watch. Long meditative dances or dances that have very small movements. There are sometimes very significant dances that don't jump around all over the place, that are just very contained. And these contained dances are most often the women's dances. Many of the dances that you see in international folk dance are men's dances, and they're dances which have been embellished in order to be performed. In the circle dancing, I mean, particularly from the work of Laura Shannon, who's collected so many of these women's dances with the express desire of the women who teach her the dances to bring them to us so that their dances won't be lost. Many of these dances are very subtle, have very small movements and have very precise movements. And so we can enjoy the beauty of those dances which come into the circle dance repertoire.
So although it's community, dancing in the circle and holding hands in many cases, it's also got that quality of inner reflection. And
absolutely. And the use of the candles and the flowers, and sometimes even particular clothing, white clothing for a particular evening of dance, really helps us to move into a different space.
So say there's somebody listening who is thinking, oh, this sounds something I'd like to try out, but they may have some anxiety around myself, who gets my left foot and my right foot muddled up, and would think, oh, this sounds fantastic, but ooh, it's a bit challenging. What would you say? Where would somebody like that go? What's their next step, would you suggest?
Well, there are two questions there, really. One is how is it if you feel a little bit worried about it? And many people do. I mean, when you start to do something new, you're not going to be absolutely comfortable the first time. I have a friend who tells me that the dancers are like friends. The first time you meet a person, you're a little bit wary, you're not quite sure. The next time you know them a bit better, you've got more to talk about. By the time you've met someone 3 or 4 times, you're just having a great time. And it can be the same with the dances. It's unrealistic to expect to be able to do them all perfectly first time. And yet sometimes people do, which is kind of strange. But the circles are very forgiving and very welcoming. A circle dance facilitator, a good circle dance facilitator, will start with very basic dances. Some dance facilitators, and this isn't limited to circle dance, actually wear different socks on left and right feet, so you can see which is their right foot and which is their left foot. Stefan does that. Lello on his left foot and Red on his right foot. So you can start slowly. You don't have to dance every dance. I mean, I'm psychologically incapable of sitting out dances, but some people can do that. And you don't have to dance every dance. Dances are explained, and dances have stories to them as well. So it's not a full-on dance, dance, dance all evening. There'll be spaces in between where the leader is explaining what the dance is about. And some of the dances are very significant, and some of them just have lovely stories that go with them because they're to folk songs which have stories or significance of some kind. So I have known people who began dancing feeling that they didn't know their left foot from their right foot, and within a few years they're just sailing around and even sharing dances with other people themselves. So it's like anything else. And when you're talking about doing it for trauma relief, it might seem a bit odd to say, well, you might feel a bit shy, a bit diffident doing it to start with. But really, that's the beginning of just about anything. And it is well worth it to take the time and get used to the dances. When I first started dancing in Hove, I did so just for relaxation and edification. I didn't even think about taking the music home or finding out more about the dance, or that I might lead dances eventually. I just sank into it and enjoyed it on a Friday evening. And then I went to workshops and sank into them and enjoyed them for a whole day. And there is where people who want to dance might find a circle, or might be able to meet up with other people who are circle dancing. And the circles, they're all over the world. There are dancers in Australia, Brazil, Argentina, Korea, Japan, all of Europe, and there are dancers in the Middle East, North and South America. And I think that probably the best way that I could help people to find circle dancing and to find a circle is for you to contact Neskaya, which is the Circle Dance Centre in New Hampshire. We'll put the link, the web address at the end of, we'll put the website address at the end of this session. It is simply www.neskaya.com. And if you go to that website and you contact us that way, we'll be able to help you, we hope, find a way to dance wherever you live.
Great.
We'll certainly try.
Good, good. I don't suppose, but I'm going to ask anyway, that you could give us a little example of a dance you do on your own, because it's interesting to hear that as you said, during the pandemic, things had to happen on Zoom, but you could do them on your own. Could you show us?
We've had to adapt the dances. So a dance that would be done in a circle with other people, and even acknowledging the other people in the circle. I guess one thing that I didn't say is that there are no partners. So that's one reason. That might be another reason that it attracts women, is that there's no need to find a partner. You can just come along and dance and step into the dance and be there your own self, doing your own thing.
I read, when I was looking up about circle dancing, a statement, so maybe you'd like to comment on that. It said, there are no mistakes in circle dancing, only variations. And it occurred to me that maybe people who were perhaps worried or nervous about getting it wrong in front of other people or themselves, or worried about their coordination, they might hear that statement and think, oh, that's a relief. But then again, it could mean, well, but what's your take on that statement?
I have heard that statement and I don't use it myself. I really don't agree with that idea, because I think it's enough for people to know that when they're beginning, as when they're beginning with anything, that the leader and the other people in the circle are going to be very patient and are not going to worry that you're putting a foot wrong. Nobody's going to be watching you to see that you're getting it all right. However, we are dancing authentic dances from many cultures, and we really feel that we need to make sure that we pass them on in as authentic a form as possible. So some of I've talked about subtle dances from Greece and the Balkans, and some of the movements are very precise. So as you progress in circle dancing, as you progress in anything, learning a language, perhaps, at first when you're trying to speak conversational French or something, you get away with making lots of mistakes. But as you get better and better and better, you or your teacher might pick you up on small things and say, okay, if you want to be really good, or if you really want to experience this, do it this way. So it's the same with circle dancing. It's very accessible in all ways, but if you are going to go deeply into the dance, it's really important to be authentic, to be true to the dances the traditional dances as we've had them transmitted, as we've learned them from people from those cultures themselves. It's also important where there are new choreographies to make sure that you're accurate with that as well. I mean, if a person creates a beautiful dance and people go around changing it, it's not really very considerate of the original choreographer. So I would not subscribe to the idea that there are no mistakes, only variations. I would say there are levels of learning, levels of familiarity, and levels of beauty and peace and harmony that can be achieved by moving together in these dances, both the traditional and ones.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah.
It is.
Great. So is there anything else, Julia, you'd like to...
Well, only once again to say thank you to you, Venetia, for the interview, to Stefan for setting up this wonderful program, and to everybody who's listening for listening to this program. And I do hope it either deepens your attachment to circle dance, your involvement with circle dancing, or perhaps leads you to try it for the first time. And I would just love it if you could follow me down along this path of absolute beauty and harmony.
Well, I must
Thank you, all of you.
I must say, even just from, when I first spoke to you last week, and then I've been looking up things, and there's a lot more to it than I had first understood, obviously, because I hadn't looked at it, but all the little, the depth of it, I hadn't realized enough depth to it.
Yes, as with just about anything, you can dabble or you can dive much more deeply into it, and it's endless. It's infinite. Well, maybe.
Thank you, Julia. That's brilliant. And we're going to have a taster of your dance, which we'll finish here, and then we'll do that. So thank you very much.
So I'm going to lead 2 circle dances now, just to show you how they go. The first one is a traditional dance from Macedonia called Ivanice. The second one is a dance which has been choreographed by Stefan Friedman to a piece of Hungarian music. So I'll just put the music on and come back to you. This is a circle dance choreographed by Stefan Friedman. It's called By a Quiet Stream, and it's sung in Hungarian. It's a beautiful, sad love song. So I'll just put the music on.